Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the August 2018 meeting of the North Carolina State Board of Education. I'm Bill Covey, Chairman of the Board, and I call this meeting to order. Welcome, board members, advisors, staff, on-site visitors, online listeners, and Twitter followers. For our visitors and those listening online, today's agenda involves our board committee sessions, and tomorrow's agenda is the official meeting when the board will vote on its action items. I want to recognize first a very special guest, former chairman of the State Board of Education, great supporter of public education, and a great friend of mine and many people in this room. So, Mr. Phil Kirk, would you stand, please? In fact, Greg Alcorn said y'all grew up in the same neighborhood. So,
Greg's a lot younger than me.
he's a preacher's son.
I don't have it.
Okay. We're going to formally recognize our new advisors, but I want to briefly acknowledge that they're here. Janet Mason, who's the superintendent advisor. Welcome, Janet.
Yay.
Tabari Wallace, who's the principal of the year, and here on the board by virtue of that, and the newest teacher of the year, Freeburg McKinney. So welcome to all of you. Glad to have you here, and we'll formally recognize you tomorrow at the meeting. I will now read the ethics statement that is required of us. Board members are reminded that it is our duty to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflicts of interest as we handle the work of this board. Does any member of the board know of any conflict of interest or any appearance of conflict with respect to any matters coming before us at this meeting? If so, please state them for the record. If during the course of the meeting you become aware of an actual or apparent conflict of interest, please bring the matter to the attention of the chair. It will then be your duty to abstain from participating in the discussion on the matter and from voting on the matter.
Mr. Chairman, I do want to recuse myself from all things with the Renewal school program. I'm intimately involved with Rowan Salisbury.
Okay. Yes,
I'm down to about 3 minutes.
So please note that for the record, that Mr. Alcorn is recusing himself from the two matters that are considered on the renewal district proposal. Since our last meeting, many of our year-round and modified calendar schools have started another school year with students. When we return for our September meeting, traditional calendar schools will also be in session. We wish a successful year to the students, teachers, staff, administrators, superintendents, and others that will serve the public school students during the 2018-19 school year. Additionally, we have many staff changes that have occurred within DPI, and the board looks forward to its update on staffing from the state superintendent. Board members, you have been, you've already seen the agenda for a week and have had an opportunity to review it. If there are any requests to change anything on the agenda, let me know or speak up. If not, I request a motion for approval.
Move approval.
Okay. Mr. McDivitt moves, Ms. Taylor seconds. Dr. Townsend Smith, please call.
Chairman Covey,
Yes.
Vice Chair Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Alcorn,
Yes.
Mr. Chastain,
Yes.
Ms. White,
Yes.
Mr. Duncan,
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt,
Yes.
Mr. Keenan,
Yes.
Ms. Taylor,
Yes.
Dr. Oxendine,
Yes.
Okay, the motion is approved. Okay, well, as you know, the statutes establish training requirements for the board. We participate in issue sessions to help the board fulfill its statutory duty of hearing and discussing matters that have policy implications. We will now begin our discussion on early literacy programs in North Carolina that have policy implications for our schools and students. Today's presentation aligns directly with the board's approved strategic plan, specifically Goal 6, Objective 6.4, to ensure equity and student achievement for student subgroups. Many board members are interested in this topic and requested a presentation at the May 2018 Planning and Work Session. I will now turn over the program to Mr. Greg Alcorn and his guests at this time for instructions on how we will proceed. Mr. Alcorn.
Thank you, Chairman Kobe and board members, Superintendent Johnson, advisors, new and old. I'm excited about doing this. I want to talk about AppSeed. AppSeed is a program that is designed to improve literacy and language for children 0 to 4. I hope we don't have to call that a subgroup, but if this is, if that's the way it is, then it's in the form of an e-reader that is loaded with applications that have been chosen by the Rowan-Salisbury school system. Today, these readers are being distributed in Rowan County and Davie County, and with the hopes of being able to see improvements in our short-term goal, which is third grade assessment pass rate, our mid-range goal, which is third grade reading test, and our long-range goal, which is economic improvement in the areas where the seedling is produced. And I brought a copy. We currently have about 3,500 of them that are distributed with a goal of 6,000 by the end of this year. So we're excited about that. And I want to begin with the end in mind, and that is to say thank you. This AppSeed would not have happened without my participation in the State Board of Education, and I'll show you the 3 reasons for that right now. But the weird thing that happened was when Governor Pat McCrory called me and asked me to be on the board, and I thought he was kidding. I thought he had probably asked everybody he knew and 3 dead people before he got to me. But he insisted he wanted to have somebody who had a business background and a little bit of understanding of technology, and I kind of fit that bill, so I took it on. My wife and I are on about 20 different boards and committees, and we only do it with a 2-way street. That is, if we can provide value and we can receive value. And in this case, with the State Board of Education, it's been disproportional. I have provided a little value to the State Board of Education, but you have provided immense value to me in my life, and have helped me and my wife, Missy, to really be able to define the mission in our lives, at least for me, for the next 34 years. I'm 60, and I intend to work till I'm 76 full-time, till I'm 84. I intend to work part-time till I'm 84, and when I'm 94, I'm going to die. So, write it down, it makes it true, so just write that stuff down. 132 quarters left, so here we go. The slide that you see in front of you is the 3 reasons that AppSeed started. When Patricia Willoughby would go over and over and over again about pre-K and the value of pre-K, and then the Nobel Prize winner in economics, James Heckman, study about the 7 to 10% return on investment. That got me charged up. I like to be able to handle wrap around numbers, words, and pictures. The second thing that happened was Buddy Collins invited this group to Winston-Salem to hear the study by Dr. Wayne Foster on proficiency. If you're 50% or less proficient in a grade, it takes you twice as long, and in my case, twice as many resources in order to catch up. Then the third thing that happened was when Dr. David Copenhaver, who has done two great things in his life, he's an accomplished, well sought out resource for early childhood education from Appalachian State University. He sent me the 30 million word gap study. If you haven't seen it, get it. It's an easy read, page and a half, that can tell you the difference between socioeconomically advantaged household versus a disadvantaged household, and how that can happen so quickly in those first 3 to 4 years of life, where there can be an achievement gap that just cannot be reduced or narrowed. So he sent that, and that really was the basis for what we started with AppSeed. The other thing he did was he married my sister, so that was really good. Which one do I hit? The development of this is about a 3-year-old program, and back in 2015, if I can back it up to 2015, in November, we met the people from Apple Computer. That's why it was called Appleseed Early Childhood, and we changed it to AppSeed. But had a conversation with an Apple executive named Tanya Aldridge from Greenville, North Carolina, and Tanya was able to, we shared the concept, and she sprung into action, got 6 visionary, concept-oriented professionals from Apple Computer, met in Salisbury with Dr. Lynn Moody and about 40 other people to put together this concept. And that helped accelerate the program. We're indebted. I hope we can come back and use Apple products in the future, but it really was the baseline for the creation of AppSeed. The second thing, well, right after that meeting, we found out that the iPads that Apple provided were a Ferrari automobile when we needed a bicycle. So we didn't know what to do, and this is the research and development department, Eliza and Sally Lipscomb, who had a Kindle Fire that their father, who works for us, was showing us, and we said, that's it. So we spent the next year with Kindle to use those, to provide those to Head Start. Our pilot program was 2 Head Start and Early Head Start centers in Salisbury, and that worked out. But that was terrific. But the seedling was too restrictive for us, so we created our own. So this is now a custom-built device that we have put together, we have designed, can manufacture, do the assembly, and it's designed to just follow a low SES child, to have literacy apps only, as we've talked about, and we provide a 3-year commitment that if the way this works is a family comes to a hub, if you will, and we'll talk about the distribution in a little bit, and they are required to fill out an application which includes a pledge that child can use the device for free, and all they have to do is respond to us every 90 days with our 5-question survey. Are you using it? How much are you using it? What's your child's favorite app? What's it doing for your child? What's it doing for you? And those are the 5 questions. So we do that over and over again. And they fill out that, and then they receive it for free. And we found this out last year, that we didn't promote it enough, that replacement is part of the model. No questions asked, replacement. So we found out that we didn't emphasize that enough, and we had some children that it would break or something would happen to it, and that ain't gonna happen anymore. Wow. And this is the voiceless demographic that we're supporting. The device is designed to be read to, with, from the child. Our target market is T-minus 120. Expectant mother, 4 months before they have the child, and to be able to have it to where they can play the 40 nursery rhymes that are on there to the womb, and early childhood, be able to read to the child in the early years. By the time the child becomes 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, it's participatory, and then by the 3 and 4 year time, the child can do it themselves. The next couple slides are the business-oriented slides, if you will. So we're vertically integrated. I don't think you hear many nonprofits talk about being vertically integrated and striving to saturate the target market, but that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to find every single disadvantaged child in Rowan County and Davie County as fast as we can to provide them with these 3 years of support. And one of the questions that people ask is, well, what do you do after the 3rd year? We don't know. We ain't got that figured out yet. We're not that far. But I'm not going to take it away from them. You know, you can if you want to try to take it away from them. But there's something impactful in every one of these parts of it. The one I draw your attention to is the logistics part of it, which is we have everything that comes in 3s with AppSeed. We have 3 principles that we use on the distribution of it. First, hub and spoke. We're more of a wholesaler, so we go to areas that have hopefully 100 or more children that are served in that, and that can be a daycare center, or a Head Start. The most popular one today in Davie and Rowan County is the health department. The Women, Infant, Children WIC program is seems to be a very good spot for us to reach the target markets. And the cost of this, we've got it. We're at our 6,000 this year. Right now, the cost is $50 a year per child for 3 years. And the distribution of this is the partnerships we were talking about, the WIC program there on the left. The one I'm proud of all these. The Salisbury Pediatric Clinic, which seems 85% of our target market in Rowan County, were contributors in the concept from the very beginning. The Rowan Salisbury School System with Dr. Moody, and she's going to come up here in a little bit and talk about her experience with AppSeed is terrific. And the one on the top right, which is we just started, which is the Rowan Vocational Opportunities, which is a center where adults with cognitive challenges can have jobs and do assembly. And they did all of our assembly, loading on the apps. It was just beautiful. It was goosebump kind of participation. I heard a couple years ago the difference between that a nonprofit was not looking for advocates anymore. They were looking for accomplices. So didn't want somebody just to help them. Somebody will get involved. Well, these are the folks that are involved, and you can see the seal from the State Board of Education is in there. Tigley and RV App Studios are the ones that provide the nonprofit apps. That's why you'll never see an AppSeed seedling on the Amazon for sale, because everything we're doing is free from that standpoint. The Mebane Foundation on the top right are the ones that sponsored all of Davie County, and we're indebted to them. I share this with you just as a template for the types of measurements that we'll be going through, the short-term measurements. This was just from 6 months. We score on language and literacy. This is from the Head Start people. The TSG, Teaching Strategies Goal, is a common measurement of outcomes for the children in Head Start. And this does not provide year-over-year comparison, so I'm not going to count it or look at it until next year. Now, you can go ahead and give us credit for all of these, the exponential increases in language and literacy, but I'll leave it to you for that. This is all I need. And when we go to the Head Starts, when we go to the WIC program, when we find people on the street, when they come up and talk to us and holding the seedlings and talking about what they do there for their family, it's terrific. We distributed 60 in 2016, 600 last year, 6,000 is the goal this year. We're already at 3,500. We're moving. We think we'll get to 6,000. But the very first one was given to a grandmother who it took 15 minutes. The tutorial on this is supposed to be 2 minutes. It took 15 minutes to fill out the application and go through that. And I'm watching that and going, this isn't going to work, which I said a lot during the first 12 or 14, 18 months of AppSeed. But she came back to our offices unannounced about 6 weeks later, tears of joy, saying this was really helping her child, but it was also helping her read. And it's like, wow, that's good enough for me. So we run through walls and do everything we can on this. The money part of this is the private funding is primarily from my wife Missy and I have been fortunate enough to be able to do that. We're not betting the farm on this, but we're putting a lot of chickens into it to do that. The advocates and the foundations have been very active, and public funding may be a choice. I'll let y'all decide. We're not ready to spend a lot of time on that yet to do it, but it is, again, it's a 3-year commitment by APSI to provide the device, the protective case, the accessories, the research, and the replacement of that device, no questions asked, to be able to hopefully get it to where what our end game is, to make it to where that child is age proficient for the first 4 years. Then once they get into pre-K or kindergarten and beyond, that they're grade proficient. Thank you, Dr. Wayne Foster, for that. This is the hierarchy of reads, and it's hard to read, of course, but it's, as Tracy Zimmerman told me, there is no silver bullet in education, but there are some shiny ones, and we hope that we can be part of doing something. Our position on the hierarchy is the second from the bottom. The first one is you have to have, the child needs to be healthy and safe and have at least one loving adult, which I got from Dr. Ellen Essex on the whole healthy part of it. And then our responsibility is to, on that second one, to hopefully be able to have it to where those children that were normally in that 15 million word receiving of, and some of those words being negative, be closer to the 45 million and close that gap, and then eventually get to where it's a generational change, where you have lifelong learners that can be contributors to society. And I'd like to call Dr. Lynn Moody up here to talk a little bit about what it means to Rowan Salisbury School System. I guess this first hour of the presentation is, or first hour of our meeting is brought to you by Rowan Salisbury. And it will share with you that Dr. Moody is on the board of AppSeed and was the first contributor to funds where she spontaneously, we were talking about this back in 2016, early 2016, at her office with some deputy superintendents there, and she jumped out of her seat and went over to her pocketbook and pulled out $100 and gave it to the deputies and said, "Go buy a Kindle. I want to see how these things work." And then she was the one responsible for getting Governor Hunt and his wife Carolyn to Salisbury about a month and a half ago.
Well, I can't say enough good things about Greg Alcorn, but you probably already know all of those things. There are very few people in the world that we live in. Well, there are a lot of people in the world that we live in public education that come up and say to us constantly, "How can I help you?" Greg is one of those very few people who actually do something about it. And it's just been a joy. From the beginning, he said, let's just do it. Let's just try it. Let's just work on it. We'll fix it as we go. So he didn't let any of those bumps in the road, and he kept all those partners involved as he continued to move forward. We did about a couple months ago have a really great celebration where we pulled some key partners together, including Governor Hunt, who heard us talk about this at a legislative debriefing, and he, during that period of time, said, "I've got to meet this guy, I've got to know more about this," and got very excited about the work we're doing, or the work that Greg is leading, I should say. So I'll just end with saying it's an honor and a privilege, and we all look to him. He models for us each day what education should be about. He does his research. He works hard to get it done, and we're just excited about the work that's being done and look forward to sharing it with you more. So I always invite you to come visit if you'd like to see the work on the ground.
The last slide is the one that Tricia Willoughby and all the rest of you would be jumping on me on if I didn't do it, and that was what's the return on investment on this. And I mentioned the 3-year goals. So the BHAG means big, hairy, audacious goal. So the 3-year goal is to get those kindergarten assessments up from 70% to 90%. Thank you, Mebane Foundation, for coming up with that measurement. That is a short term. Long term is we want to move the needle on third grade reading test. The whole theory of they build prisons based on third grade reading tests. Well, you know, we've got some real numbers every day, and at least in Rowan County, where it's at 22%. If we can move 22 to 50 on the socioeconomically disadvantaged children, if 50% of them, which we should be 22, comes 50, that raises all boats. That tide moves everything, and that would make a significant impact into the third grade reading test. And you know that read to learn, learn to read part, learn to read, read to learn. And then the 10-year is also to be able to help our schools get higher grades on that A through F, and to also make an economic impact, because people want to come to communities where there are good schools. Thank you for allowing me in the presentation, and thank you for being an unbelievable, significant part of this project.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Lisa, and then Mr. Keenan.
Well, as a kindergarten teacher, this presentation thrilled my soul. I'm not kidding. I'm a firm believer that the answer to third grade reading scores and graduation rates lie in front loading and providing resources for early intervention in the pre-K, K2 levels. And categorically, those are the areas where we see the least technology, we see the least funding for resources, for curriculum support. So this is just a blessing. It really is. And I still have a little bit of heartburn from the General Assembly's decision in June to shift the $50 million of new federal funding that was intended to help working families afford quality preschool, to use that money in other areas. That was a missed opportunity to really help provide slots for our children in the pre-K level, and to get that foundation that they need to be successful. So I thank you, Greg Alcorn, for getting this moving and for being a private source of funding. But I really would like our General Assembly to get on board and to help provide this for all children in North Carolina, because it is greatly needed and it is the answer. So if we want to see success in North Carolina schools, we need to put the money out there for funding.
Mr. Keenan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just like to say that in life, sometimes you meet people that deter you, who some people that make you think the world is doomed. But when people like Greg come into your life, you see a person who cares, a person who makes a difference. So I just want Greg to know that just not today, but before today, I've seen many characteristics that give me hope, and definitely give our children hope based on what you just saw, because what you're doing is love and caring. And that's what all the kids want, is just someone who love and care. And I tip my hat off to you again. Thank you and others for what you've done, but particularly for your leadership. I mean that from the heart. Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir. Amy, you want to?
I love the part of your presentation with the nod to workforce development and the vision that productive workers are today's preschoolers, and that those statistics, I was so mad the first time I heard that third grade reading scores determine how we build our prison system. So the quantum leap for that is that there is an investment either on the front end or the back end. And we can be proactive and visionary and make that investment in our young folks so that they are the productive workers that our state needs. And I would a whole lot rather them be successful in school. Fifth grade scores are the things that determine high school graduation rates. Students who are not successful by the end of fifth grade have a 5 times greater chance of not graduating from high school. Students who do not graduate from high school are the citizens in our state who become dependent on our social services system, and many times our prison system. So it is our choice. thank you for the investment that you're making
Yes.
in young folks today so that they're productive for tomorrow.
Bill.
Yes.
Yes, but, Mr. McDevitt.
Well, first of all, let me say this, that's well said from Amy, who got a big service award for the work in her community this past month. And when I read about that award, Amy, it says over a significant number of years, it's just not just service, and so yeah, great coming from you. I correct at the risk of correcting Greg on one matter.
That's good.
The value, you talked about the value to you from this board, not even a close equity. The value that you've brought to this board institutionally, and to me personally, I've had the opportunity to kind of follow this as it's gone along, as you and I have, we won't say where, but we've talked about it evenings, and for me, that's that the value that you bring, and this is a great initiative. It's a great program. It started with a blank sheet of paper, and as Reggie just said, someone who cared and decided to have that manifest, the heart manifest in communities. But you have brought tremendous value to this board. It's a great personal testimony of you and Missy. And I'd say this, the value to the board and to me and to other board members individually is obvious. There are going to be numbers and numbers and numbers of kids and people and families who will never know your name or the name Appseed that this brings value to. And for that, I just say thank you.
Okay.
Yes, Ms. Scott.
Thank you.
Well, you know, I'm usually one who doesn't say much, but I really have to say that, Greg, that is a wonderful and very passionate presentation. And Appseed sounds like it is something that's needed throughout our state. And once we can get it in our state, we're going to take care of home first. Then it can go other places. But it is wonderful. And no child can be ready to score where he or she needs to score until until the child is successful at the beginning, to go along with Lisa. And, you know, I started in elementary school, and I do know that one skill builds upon the other, and you can't skip over any of them and expect to achieve success. So thank you so much, and please and so glad you haven't lost heart. Just continue to sally forth. Thank you.
Enough group hug.
Well, Greg, we love you and
Thank you.
really appreciate you. And I'm going to now throw it back to you.
Becky wants to say
Because-
something, Chair.
Well,
Yeah.
you know what, I think we've heard all the wonderful things, and I think we could go on and on, because you've touched me, and I think this is probably one of the best presentations during my time on the board that's really just grabbed me, and I'm sure everyone in this room, in this building, sees the value. I think we need to give you a standing ovation.
Mr. Alcorn.
I am still Greg Alcorn.
Will you proceed to the Business Operations Committee that you chair?
Yes, sir. Business Operations Committee, we have 3 actions on first read. The first one is about the renewal schools. It's the allotment policy manual. Modifications included in allotment adjustments for renewal schools. And I don't have a there it is, Alexis. Alexis Strauss will be presenting on that. Good morning.
I was just tentative because I really didn't want to come up here after standing ovations.
Really?
Mine probably will not, well, I know it won't merit that. However, this is the allotment policy manual modifications, and it does include the renewal school system policy. I am requesting that this be on action on first read based on the timing of the implementation of some of these policies, and because it is action on first read, I will touch on most of the items very briefly to bring them to your attention. You have two attachments. Attachment 1 is really changes to the guaranteed allotments and to general policies. There was a change to the veteran teacher bonus that only allows that bonus to be for teachers that were held harmless. It just keeps their pay at the 17-18 pay level. The highly qualified teaching graduate has a new cohort, and we have changed the benefits rates. On page 4, you'll see that there was a change to the ABC transfer policy that restricts any transfers into or out of driver's ed. That is new, and in addition to the restrictions that were in the budget bill last year on textbooks and digital resources and AIG. In your attachment 2, these are changes to specific allotment categories. It is just a separate section within the allotment policy. And as I stated, most of the changes are explicitly stated in legislation. And so going through the page numbers, on page 3, there was a change to driver's education that allows the DPI to use up to 2% of the state aid for administration. On page 8, there was a change to low wealth that includes, it changes the average daily membership requirement to be held harmless on the 2012-13 allocation. Previously, it only incorporated Onslow County, and this incorporates Wayne County as well. On page 9, there were modifications to the principal and teacher performance bonuses. It modifies the principal bonus amounts for the top 50% as measured by the school growth score. It added, so it actually almost doubled those bonus amounts. It added that if a principal was supervising a school that was a D or F school, that those amounts would be doubled, and it eliminated the previous bonus for a school that went from not met to exceeds. On page 11, there were also changes to some of the teacher bonuses. Most of these are technical in nature, just taking out prior year language. But it does stipulate now that teachers must be employed on January 1 to receive that bonus. And it also decreased the amount for the 4th and 5th grade reading bonus and the 4th through 8th grade math bonus from $2,150 to $2,000. On page 19 is the renewal school system. You will probably receive much more in-depth information on the renewal school system in EICS 1, but related to financial, the Session Law 2018-32 does provide in legislation that upon approval by the State Board of Education, that a renewal school system shall receive their funds in effect one lump sum, in one bucket, I should say, with no restrictions to use of those funds. So with that, in practice, the legislation, kind of paraphrasing, states that when it is approved, they will receive the amount of funding they would have received under the funding formulas, but with no restrictions of use. And so in practice, this policy reads very similar to charter schools, because in practice, that is how we fund our charter schools. We do all the allocations. We then divide it by the average daily membership for a per pupil amount. So with regards to the formula, the renewal school system will receive a base allocation, which is all the initial allotment formulas. We will add to that driver's education, which charter schools do not receive, because school districts are responsible for the driver's education of all public school and private school students. In addition to that, they will receive a funding amount for the exceptional children and LEP, limited English proficient students, based on their head count. But these funds will be put into an unrestricted bucket. They do lose all their identity once they are put into that funding bucket. But of course, the school district is required to provide the services as required by law. And then number 4, they will also receive other funding that are after the initial allotments. So we do not put out all the funding at the beginning of the year, mostly because we don't have either the data or the funding. So these items include connectivity funds, fines and forfeitures, cooperative innovative high school money. Again, they will receive these funds, but they will be received into that one funding bucket. The Renewal school system will also be eligible to apply for grants, just like any other school district. And if these are restricted in nature, such as we have the school resource officer grants, we will treat them similar or consistently as we do with charter schools, and we will restrict similar to how we do charter schools. This funding formula, just for full disclosure, will work for the first year. It will be a challenge, and we will need some modifications in the second year, primarily because of the conversion of position allotments, and it is based on an average salary, which we will lose that average salary amount. So there will be changes, I anticipate, next year, where we'll have to clarify some of that. The special provisions is really looking at how they'll receive those funds, and we will allocate out 100% of the funds, unlike charter schools that receive it in thirds. And we will adjust it consistent to how school districts are adjusted based on actual average daily membership. There is a threshold for school districts, which we will apply to the renewal school system to be consistent with LEAs. The legislation states that there is a hold harmless, that the school system, the renewal school system, will not receive any less funding than they did in total in 2017-18. And based on our initial assessment, that will not come into that will not come into play. We have worked and communicated through this process with Rowan Salisbury Schools, which will be is the one school district that is eligible to apply. And we both feel that this does meet the intent of the legislation and will meet their needs as they anticipate it. Going through the other couple of items in the changes to the allotment policy manual, there was a legislative change to the range in the small county supplemental funding. So it does actually incorporate Cherokee County that was excluded based on their size. The teacher assistant, turning TAs into a teacher's program. It is a tuition reimbursement program for teacher assistants. That pilot has grown now to a total of 38 LEAs, and they did change the amount that could be reimbursed up from $4,500 to $4,600 per TA. And those are the changes for the allotment policy manual at this time. I do want to just state that the board has already approved allotment policy for the innovative school district, as well as the program enhancement teachers that came earlier.
Thank you, Mr. House. Any questions or comments from our colleagues? Mr. Duncan.
The provision about the bonus being paid the following year, January 1, that's following the statutory rubric, is that correct?
That's correct. And the change was actually putting explicit that the teacher had to be employed on January 1 in order to be eligible.
So two thoughts. One is if a teacher, after a storied career, were to retire at the end of the year and not employed January 1, they would not then receive the bonus.
That's correct.
And the other one is if the teacher goes to another LEA, again, would not receive the bonus.
That's correct. That language is consistent.
I just leave the thought to linger. Is that good policy? The teacher is still in North Carolina schools with that type of performance. Obviously, any LEA does not want to lose a quality teacher of that type if they're still a teacher in the state of North Carolina. Is that a philosophy that not looking for an answer.
Good question.
A thought philosophically about it. Maybe we should think about that further.
Good question.
Makes sense.
You mentioned that the formula would work for this year, and then you said for next year that you would have to clarify or add clarity. Does that translate to there might be the possibility of a shortfall for next year or an adjustment? Can you sort of explain?
Sure. So, we allocate out 70,000 positions in North Carolina to public schools, and that they are not provided the funding per se, they are provided the positions. And that when we convert the funding into dollars per ADM for charter schools or lab schools or all these other entities, we are converting based on the average salary for those specific positions. There are, close to, there are like 95,000 teachers. So there's another kind of group of teachers that are not incorporated in that conversion. The group that's not included actually are generally a lower paid group. They are lower experienced, I guess I would say. They're not. They're just a group that has less experience, so therefore less. They're paid less on that salary schedule. So if we combined the total average teacher salary, it would be less. So, and it would not be consistent in how we fund the other school systems. So where what I was referring to was because we don't have that restricted bucket of position allotments within the renewal school system, we don't have a correlating average salary to convert into dollars. So we'll have to come up with some other way to convert.
That's satisfactory. Are you okay? Any other questions or comments? Yeah, Vice Chair Davis?
So, Michelle, since, for the benefit of giving the school district much greater flexibility in how they use the funds, we're losing a lot of ability to understand how the funds are being used. Do you have any suggestions for how we should beef up our ability to monitor how they spent the funds once they all go into this bucket? Then how's our ability to track their use of those funds?
We will not lose any ability to know how they use the funds. We will have the same ability with the Uniform Chart of Accounts. We have the same data collection. They are still held under UERS reporting. So we will be able to know how they're spending it, compare it to other school systems, incorporate that with their change in results, et cetera.
Excellent. I had received that question from someone who was curious, so thank you.
All right, this will come as a motion with a second tomorrow to be approved on action on first read. Thank you, Ms. Shoust. I think you're next also on the employee salary, BizOp 2, employee salary and benefit manual modifications.
Correct. This is also being brought to you on action on first read. It is a modification that relates only to principal pay, and you will see that that is the only section that is incorporated in your materials. It is reflecting changes in legislation. You'll recall last year there were significant changes in the way that school-based, principals were paid. Previously, their pay was determined based on experience, education, and the size of the school. And last year, it was changed to the school growth at the school that the principal supervised, as well as the school size. The criteria that was used to determine the growth and the school size was the most current year data. And that data is not available currently. And of course, principals have already been paid their first paycheck. So we received those data elements in the fall. So the appropriations bill put in language that changed the determination of the data that was to be used for the first half of the school year versus the second half of the school year. So this policy is stating that from July 1 through December 31st, the pay is determined based on the 3 years of growth and the average daily membership that was used for the pay determination in 17-18. In other words, it will not use the 2018 accountability results or the 2019 average daily membership. And then starting in January 1, the principal's pay will be recalculated. It's not a retroactive pay. It will start in January 1, and the pay will be recalculated using the 3 years, most current years, and that will include the 2018 growth status as well as the 2019 average daily membership.
Okay. Thanks for that detail. Any questions or comments? Ms. Wallace, our Principal of the Year advisor. It's your money.
Just concerned that it's kind of you're getting paid midway through, and then so going to next year we will stay on that same from January 1 to December 31st. We'll still be on that this year's data, correct?
Well, at least through June 30th. So unless there were meaning that there could be changes in the appropriations bill next year, but at this point, one would assume, yes.
So as it stands now, so it's still a work in progress.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? And this will be come as a motion and a second on action first read tomorrow. And BizOp 3 is 21st Century Community Learning Center grants. That's under Dr. Eric Call, but also I think Dr. Chris Vecchiani. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. So today I have the opportunity to present to you the most recent results for the 21st Century Community Learning Centers Program competition. Normally you'd be hearing from Donna Brown, but as you know, today is her first day of the rest of her life, as she has said. She's enjoying the first day in her garden as a retired state employee after 37 years, and we already miss her, I can tell you that. So today I'm presenting for your consideration recommendations for 49 applicants for the 21st Century Community Learning Center grant. This is Title 4B, the official title. This would be Cohort 13. In your materials, you do have an overview of the program. In attachment number 1, it shares a little bit about the background information. These grants are eligible applicants would be LEAs, nonprofits, for-profits, city, county government, faith-based organizations. Also, institutions of higher education can apply for these grants as well. The purpose of the grants is really for 3 strands. 1, obviously, to provide remediation and enrichment activities to students during non-school hours. So that's the big catch. So this is supplemental to what's already happening in the schools. This can happen after school, can happen at night, can happen on Saturdays, and it can happen over a summer program as well. For the 2017-18 school year, we had 2 cohorts. It was Cohort 11, Cohort 12. Cohort 11 just finished, but in those 2 cohorts, we had 111 programs serving almost 18,000 students after school at night on Saturdays or over the summer. The grant awards, as you can see in the overview, is basically about the quality of the proposal, the amounts available in any given year. This is a single-year grant with the option of renewal for 2 additional years, based on federal funding and continuation of the program. From last year to this year, there was level funding, so we were able to offer a new program and a new opportunity for Cohort 13 schools. But attachment number 1, as I shared, basically gives you the overview, the eligibility and priority, how priority points are provided. If you look on page 15 in that same packet, this provides you with the rubric. This is the plan for proposals. This outlines everything that the applicants needed to know in order to apply for these grants, and the rubric is involved in that as well. There were 113 applications statewide that came in as of the timeline of, it was basically 11:59 on May 30th. So of 113 applications, we had funding available for 49 of the top scored. If you look in your materials on page number 3, this is where it begins to share with you the recommendations. Page 3 is the recommendation of the 49 by rating. So in numerical order, on page number 5, you have it by the districts across the state. On page 8, you will see the remainder after the 49 that are not recommended by rating. And then finally on page number 11, those not recommended by the district. If you look at the total, it was roughly or exactly $15,771,977. So of the grant award, half of that funding is applied to cohort number 12, which is entering year 2. So half of the funding of the just about $30+ million will be applied to this new group should you approve our recommendations. If you approve these 49 individual programs, it will impact an additional 6,000 students per year after school in a supplemental tutorial way. Again, the purpose of the program is to provide the tutoring, number 1. Number 2, to give kids opportunity for enrichment, financial literacy classes, so on and so forth. But number 3, a really great opportunity with these funds is to actually provide opportunities for the families of the students that participate in these after-school programs, including GED classes, financial literacy, and so on and so forth. So the federal government is encouraging these applicants by making that one of the 3 main stressors, that parent engagement, not only in the child's education during the school day and after school, but also providing an opportunity for the parent to learn as well through these funds. So therefore, we are recommending that the state board accept the recommendations on these pages, especially on page number 3 by rating. For these 49 schools, we ask for it to be action on first read because we would love to be able to provide these funds to those organizations as the school year gets started. We have a planned meeting early in September that we would hope to bring these individuals in and to provide them with the training and technical assistance so that they can begin immediately as the school year starts. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Mr. McDevitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are you finding any systems districts not applying because of lack of capacity or lack of understanding? Or I know that a lot of the central offices are losing capacity. Are you finding that to be an issue? I mean, this program's been out here a while, so
yes, sir.
People ought to be familiar with it. So, are you finding any of that issue?
I think if we do see that as far as directly from the LEA, if you're asking that specifically, more of the applicants are not strict LEAs. They are nonprofits or faith-based organizations. I hope that's...
Yeah, that's part of it. I want to point out, and I think I know this is driven by the demographics and the rubric, but I also want to point out that Todd, the Northwest District and the West District, that's about 20-some% of the region of the state, has 2 recommended grants.
Right.
And I want commentary about that, and I know the reason, but I want to hear it. I do know that, I am suspicious that there is some capacity or some lack of understanding about who's eligible, particularly as it relates to nonprofits and others.
Okay. And first, I think any of us can always do a better job communicating that, and I think we are working and striving to do that as well. I will tell you, I didn't mention inside the descriptor, it specifically talks about that from the federal government that the priority must go to those schools or those organizations or communities with a high number of Title I schools. Exactly. But not only that, I also oversee the priority and focus schools for the state. They also have priority points for schools that are priority. So the lowest performing schools in the state, if the organization, whether it be an LEA or a nonprofit, if they are aiming to serve them, they have additional points. So by that, in the Northwest and the West, there would be fewer of those schools there to even access.
I wanted that on the record, thank you.
Okay.
I'm familiar with that, but it's a little bit of the earlier question. I think as we look at policy, the goal of allowing every child to, as one former governor a few centuries ago, maybe a couple centuries ago, said, burgeon out all that is within us. And I think that's, I hope that we continue to find ways that's true across the board.
Right. And if I may, back to your original question on page 14, I did not share with this, it is in your packet. You do see in the middle chart on page 14 that of the 49 recommended, there were only 7 that were strictly just from a district. Okay, so most districts, or a lot of districts, do have after-school programs already, and these funds cannot replace those programs. They have to be supplemental above and beyond what they're already doing.
That's a good thing.
Okay, 2 more. Dr. Oxendine, and then Mr.
Hey,
Duncan.
thank you, Mr. Alcorn, and thank you for this presentation. I have a couple of questions. Let me get in front of the mic first.
Sure.
That might help. The information may already be in the executive summary, but I'll still ask this. It would help me to know if these grants are initial or continuing.
Okay, and that's something that is not part of these charts, but we surely can get you that information, and that's an excellent point, because you can continue a program that's already being successful and expand it.
Right, exactly.
So we could do that if maybe I could send it to you and you could email it out. Okay.
Thank you so much. And then my other question has to do with how may the funds be expended? Staffing, program-wise, combination of both?
Combination of both. There's a total of 12% that can be just for administration, that's it, and the remainder has to be program, which could include salary. Salaries, they do, inside the grant, they are required to provide transportation for any individual that wants to attend it within that area, so that would surely be a part of that. But there is a chart of accounts, which we could also provide as well, with all the allowable codes. But the parameters are wide for this grant, and I think it's great that they're wide, because I think as we said, the idea of tapping in the opportunities to not only reaching those that most need it, but also bringing the parents involved or supporting their children during the day in the program, but also providing opportunities for the parents. That's why some of the parameters are wider. Your original question about continuing and new, I should point out that in the packet, and I don't know exactly which page it is, but it's in attachment 1. It does speak very specifically that the state is required to provide priority points in the 4th bullet, wherever that is, gives priority points to novice or new programs. So they do get a leg up, so to speak, on that. Yes, ma'am.
Monitoring of the programs, I'm noted for asking an additional question, so.
Yeah. No.
If you would, monitoring outcomes, how does that happen?
As far as how is it handled?
The programs how are they monitored?
Okay. So they're monitored on site. So last year, for using the most recent year, last year, those that received the award last year, they were all monitored on site at least one time during that given year. We do give 30 days advance notice to that monitoring. The program administrators that work with 21st Century go on site. They spend a day there. Sometimes they spend a day and a half. And they have a whole monitoring protocol that they're required to follow. Once they do that, then within 7 days, we provide a written feedback to that program to either provide a report that there were no findings, or provide a report that there are some recommendations, or so there's 3 outcomes: either no findings, no recommendations, or a report with findings. Fiscally, they're monitored throughout the year. This is a reimbursable grant. I think that's the term. So in other words, these new programs will have to have funds in advance to pay for, and then request the drawdown for reimbursement. So there's a safety net there. We also collect receipts on expenditures, they're required to submit that. There's a whole slew of
Very good. Good
protocols.
answers. Thank you.
And I'd be happy to provide that protocol as well if you would like to see it. And
Excellent.
it's actually on page 22, your fourth bullet there, novice applicants get priority points.
Mr. Duncan.
Obviously, this is intended to help our students who are impacted in various parts of our state. Are there any analytics that are provided particularly for the continuing applications with respect to what, if any, effect it's had on student achievement or supporting student achievement?
We do conduct a survey at the end of each year, and we do have those survey results. Actually, I think they came in last week, so there's a final report. The analytics you're speaking to specifically on data points, I could not comment on whether or not we have that prepared at this point to provide you, but we could definitely look at it. I think it's extremely relevant.
Thank you. Johnny, thank you. Appreciate it. Oh, is there one more?
Yes, sir. I really love this program. I was wondering, on 29, I didn't see that you could or could not use it. I saw there were nutrition instruction, but I didn't see if you could use it for meal supplements at these. I didn't see the funds being used for either. Is that allowed, or?
They do have snacks.
Okay.
So there is a budget line item code for snacks,
Okay.
but it's not specifically for full meals.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. One more, Mr. Wallace. Yes, sir.
I have a little bit of experience with 21st Century Grant. We actually used that down at Havelock Middle School when we had tremendous games in math and ELA. But we did that with current teachers. You know, teachers are now working 2 jobs trying to make ends meet. I just wanted to ask the question: was there a focus when you're doing the training for the grant before it's submitted to try and get more teachers involved in that after-school study or in your summer programs? Because that's where the rubber hit the road for us. We
Right.
actually made great gains, but had to sever that because the person over it in my particular county wanted to go with more community-based and didn't want to train teachers. So I just want to ask the question: is there a focus to try and get and recruit teachers for after school or during the summer to supplement their income as well, to keep them busy?
Right. Well, for the record, I think it's an excellent idea, but for our division, we do not promote that, so to speak, but we don't, you know, we're not against it either. Most of these organizations are, they are looking at the bottom line too, but also how can we reach the most amount of kids for the dollars that we have. We do have several programs that specifically do look for teachers for after school or weekend or summer work. And obviously I think that's a great idea. But it isn't something that we give any kind of priority points for if they're looking within the school at those teachers. And there's also another side to it about if they're working all day long. And then there's somewhat of a consideration of conflict if you are then tutoring your same students after school. There would be a question there. It's not against the rules, so to speak. But
Yeah, we did it in the summer.
yeah, in the summer, we do have.
The analytics, if you have that,
Yeah.
if you would do the comparison.
Right.
Of actual teachers teaching kids, and then the community tutors teaching
Yeah.
kids, and see what progress you get from your data.
Yeah, I don't disagree one bit.
Great conversation and questions and super report. We listened to this on our committee report. They do a lot of work on 21st Community Learning Center grants. So thank you for that presentation. That'll come as a action on first read tomorrow. We've got contracts that are available. If anybody has any questions about contracts, please don't hesitate to ask us. And Mr. Chairman, that concludes
Mr. Chair,
our.
could I ask a question,
Yes,
if you
sir.
don't mind?
Sure, sorry.
Future, I like this, the way you're breaking this out, executed contracts and planned contracts. Is it, could we get, and I don't even know what all I want to ask for, but I would like to see an indication of no bid contracts or single source contracts or even convenience contracts. That is, and in some cases there are split contracts. And there might be others that I don't know about, but at least those I think are important for the board to know.
Thank you. We'll look into it. Thank you. All right, appreciate it, Mr. McDevitt. That concludes our committee report, Mr. Chair.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Alcorn. Now we'll move to the Education, Innovation, and Charter Schools Committee, and I recognize the committee's chair, Ms. Amy White.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I have the pleasure of serving with Mr. Wayne McDevitt for the Education, Innovation, and Charter School Committee. I'm excited to continue the conversation about Rowan Salisbury Schools and its renewal school system application. So we have that before us for approval under EICS 1, and just a reminder to board members that pursuant to state law 2018-32, House Bill 986, school systems that have the greatest percentage of restart schools and who have received low wealth supplemental funding and who have more than 10,000 students as its average daily membership qualified to be a restart school district. So that's why Rowan Salisbury is before us today. And so I think we have a combo. We have Dr. Petrie Martin and Dr. Nancy Barber and Dr. James Ellerby. Just Nancy. Just me.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I apologize for the raspiness of my voice, and if I start coughing, I'll step back. But I am pleased to bring to you this morning the application that you saw last month for the Renewal School District. And I was even more excited when I walked into the boardroom today and found that Dr. Moody was in the audience, because we have read their application and we bring it before you today, telling you that the application fulfills all of the requirements that are stated in the law, and the application includes everything, all the 6 components that the law requires. But as far as specific questions that you may have, I'm going to defer to Dr. Moody if we can answer any of those questions, because she and her school board have spent timeless hours on this application, and it's very well thought out and very well organized, and it does match all of the requirements and fulfill all the requirements in the law. Are there any questions that?
Questions from my colleagues?
Does Dr. Moody want to say something about the opportunity? And yes, please come up and say something.
Thank you. We are very excited about this opportunity. We have been busy working, as you can imagine, staff. I have a very innovative, creative staff, and I'm blessed with a great team and a Board of Education that has given us 100% support. So I'm lucky to work in a district with that kind of leadership. And there's several people in this room that will know that for sure. Greg and Phil know the people that I'm talking about. So it's a pleasure and honor. We know that all eyes are kind of on us as we move forward. I appreciated the question about transparency and what we're going to do financially. We have tried to assure everyone in this process. We don't have all the answers yet. It's a work in discovery. But we know with a lot of flexibility also comes great accountability for that. We are hoping that we will make a lot of truly innovative decisions over the next really couple of years, not just this year. And we know that we will do some things extremely well, and we will do some things that we will fail at. And we want to share both of them with you as we go through that journey. So it is our goal to let you know what we think is not working and what is working. We're going to try, we believe that innovation lives in a space where there is failure along the way as well. So if you'll be patient with us in that process, we're going to really try to push the mark in some areas, and they may not work. But we want to share that journey with you as well. We've had tremendous support from DPI, and we are looking forward to, with your permission tomorrow, if there's an approval here, that we're ready for this journey. We've got a lot of plans in place even for this month. So we've got our fingers crossed that things go well here. Tomorrow is our last kind of check off of approval in this journey. Beginning on August the 8th, we are hoping to have a kickoff community breakfast, trying to explain to our community why the General Assembly gave us permission to go this route. And I know Superintendent Johnson will be there on that panel, as well as a lot of key legislators that day to help us kick that off. So we're excited about that. And then we're bringing our general plan, I will just share briefly with you one thing. Our general plan is that we really want to move innovation at the local level to the hands of our teachers. And so we have put applications out for teacher-led design teams at all 35 of our schools. Those applications are starting to come in now. We expect that we will have 6 to 8 team members at most of our schools. And I can't tell you what we're going to do because I would be premature and it would circumvent the whole process, because our teachers are going to drive this innovation, not our district office. So we're waiting for our teachers to get back, our design teams to start their work. And as we make those steps in the process, we have a huge strategic guide to help them through that. We've been writing this summer, and we will kick off with them on August the 16th in a meeting. And they'll begin their work, and we'll share it with you as we go. And we think it'll be a process over several years. So we thank you for this. We hope that you will approve this and that we can move forward, and we are really grateful for this opportunity.
She's not excited about that, not one bit.
Well, and thank you. We share your excitement because we know this is a huge opportunity for you all, but it's also a huge opportunity for the state. Because when you start showing that innovation is working in your district, we're going to be able to scale that across the state, and I'm very excited about working with you to do that. So thank you for being here today, and thank you for your leadership in all of this. We're really excited.
Thank you.
Dr. Moody, I might just, the second slide of the slide, I just recommend everyone take a look at that. There are a number of bullets there, and it says opportunities which may include but are not limited to. I love that because you have explained very well. As you're adding bullets to this, I'd love to hear more as you're adding bullets to this list. This is a great list here. And also, just as you said, innovation does have failure along the way, or I don't call it failure, it's opportunity to re-explore other things. But I'd love to hear more about those things as you go along with this too, because I think this is a great program.
We do hope to share our stories as we go, and I will tell you early on, one of the things that we have thought about is that some of this innovation will not actually come from other school districts or educators, but we are looking for private industry partnerships to help us think about how to reinvent schools and, of course, our families and our parents. But along those lines, we've engaged with Rick Anicetti, who was the former CFO of Food Line. We're home of Food Line. And he's helping us think through processes of how Food Line was successful in their transformation. So we're looking to other partners like that to help us think about the work and how we're exploring that work. So we have more flexibility than we will be able to use in the first year. We keep reassuring people that the first day of school won't look like the first day of school a year or two from now. Sure. But there are going to be some areas that we're going to think about that we don't need that flexibility in. We want to stay with the standard. We'll be describing this as we kick off our school year as everybody will be a first-year teacher in our district next year. So that's the kind of learning curve we're on. So, but it's an exciting learning curve.
Thanks.
Chairman Kobe.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Moody. Thank you for your leadership. I think the General Assembly picked a great district to start this, and there'll be a lot of us rooting for you because there are many of us that really believe that people at the local level need to be empowered to make the decisions. They're best able to know what is needed in their particular area. So I compliment the General Assembly for taking this step and compliment you for being the first.
Thank you, Chairman Kelly. I've kind of described this as we've been chasing this truck and asking for this, and we caught it, and we're like, oh my goodness, now what are we going to do with this truck that we just caught? So it is going to be challenging, but very exciting.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I have just a quick question. I'm fascinated. I was taking a look at the handout, and the area that catches my attention has to do with the possibility of waiving standardized testing. And since I've been on the board, we've imagined what that might look like and then what would replace it in terms of all of the requirements that we have to meet for Washington purposes and for our General Assembly purposes. So I am very interested and will be paying close attention to that and perhaps picking up the phone, chatting with you about it. Because we stand to learn quite a bit from that component of renewal, or your approach to renewal, I should say.
One of our big challenges is to devise a new accountability model. And we began that work on what a accountability model should look like. And so we know that that's going to be a huge chunk of the work that we'll be working on. And we've engaged, I don't know if you've read some of John Tanner's work with Test Sense, but he is helping us guide and think about a framework for accountability that may be very different than anything that we've looked at in the past.
Thank you.
Dr. Moody, thank you so much for being with us today and for being willing to put the target on your back as all eyes are on you. In the spirit of collaboration, you have some excellent drivers that are hopping in that truck with you, and we look forward to your future success.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, so let's move on to EICS2, which is the submission of restart applications for Hertford County Public Schools. This is in the northeast part of the state, in the Ahoskie area. And, Dr. Barber, that's probably you again. Yes, ma'am.
I am just as thrilled to stand before you and tell you that we have a new person that's going to be presenting our restart model applications on a regular basis. Dr. James Ellerby has joined our staff in a full-time lead position for restarts. So it is with great pleasure that I turn over to James Ellerby.
Welcome, Dr. Ellerby.
Thank you, Dr. Barber. Good afternoon to Chairman White, to Chairman Colby, to Vice Chairman Davis, and State Superintendent Johnson, and all the state board members and advisors. I am James Ellerby, and I am here today to present several restart applications. The most recently submitted applications are from Hertford County Schools. The schools requesting restart status are Ahoskie Elementary School, Hertford Middle School, Riverview Elementary School. These applications are submitted to the State Board of Education for reading, review, and discussion.
Questions from any of my colleagues about these applications? Okay, hearing none. We will bring that up for, actually it's discussion items, so it'll be back for us next month for action. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good job. Okay, under new business today, I'm going to bring up Dr. Eric Hall, and he is going to give us a report on Southside Asheville startup and recruitment updates for our innovative school district.
Good afternoon, and appreciate the opportunity to be here. Chairman Kobe, Vice Chairman Davis, Superintendent Johnson, members of the board, the advisory, and our citizens of North Carolina. It's been an incredible journey, and we are almost there with the first day of school. And want to share a little bit of the highlights about what's been happening since not only our call last month, but the work that's been taking place over the summer to really get prepared to open the doors of our first school in this statewide system. You know, as the board, just like a local LEA board, as the board, I want to be able to show you a picture of your first school. Southside Asheville is a small elementary school. If you were to travel there by car, which is probably the only way to get there, maybe by train, but if you were going through the North Carolina-South Carolina line and you were coming up to mile marker 2 coming into the state and get off, you're going to find this amazing little community called Roland. It's locally known as the town of 1,000 friends. They've given me the ability to go ahead and say that it could be the town of 1,001 as I visit and go into town time to time. And we are really just excited about the energy and everything that's come together around this effort. You may recall that just recently we introduced the school leader. These are some pictures from some of the events that we have had over the summer, which includes local community conversations with parents. We've had hiring events that have taken place in our recruitment efforts that have been hosted by the local, town hall, to using even a local community center that has been given to us to use from time to time for these community engagement events, so that we can get parents, local leaders, and everybody really to be at the forefront of this discussion with us. Because again, we're here to serve the community and be responsive to their goals and their desires for this school, and not coming in and saying, here's what this school needs to be. Our job is to be a service organization and a service partner to them in really creating those right conditions, which goes back to our mission statement, is creating conditions around innovation to help improve outcomes in school. And so as we go back and we reflect over this past year, it's important to highlight where we're at this point in opening the doors of this new school, because while we are going to be in there with a team of dedicated professionals, an unbelievable leader, and just amazing partners, both with our operator but also local partnerships that have come together, the week after we open the doors, I'll be back before this board talking about the next communities that we'll be engaged in. Because you may recall it was September last year when we released the list of qualifying schools, and the conversations that we had as we looked at data and where do we engage in this next round of work. So I lay that as a foundation because it's very surreal to see us at this point. Again, it's been a journey. We've had a lot of conversation, not only as a board, but the conversations locally. And I have to really commend the local school board, which unanimously not only approved the transfer of the school, but just in their last board meeting approved the MOU that establishes all the work that we'll be doing together. It was a unanimous support for that MOU. We are engaged very closely with the superintendent, her district team, and everything that's gone into not only getting the facility ready for the new school year, like every other school across the state, but also making sure that our child nutrition services and every other support service that we're going to be wrapping around this school are in place as partners in this work. For me, this has been important to us because this sets the tone. A year ago, I stood before this board and I said, the values that we establish now will determine the work that this becomes in the future. We had a lot of conversation about other states and other models that are used. And one of the things that was important to me, you may recall, is that this is not about doing something to people, this is doing something with people. And we've been very intentional in that work all along. And I think that is the kind of conditions that we've created that has led to the partnerships that we've seen and how we engage in this work, because we are truly stewards of valuable resources, not just the facilities and not just the resources of time and money that go into this work, but the resources of students and families that are served by this community and this school. So right now, our community meeting that we had on June 21st, I referenced this a little bit on our call last month. Great turnout from parents and local leaders, very excited. And one of the things that they mentioned in that meeting, there was a group of parents that said, could we have uniforms at the school? We paused, we kind of looked, we're like, well, is that what everybody wants? And everybody in that room stood up and said, yes, that's what we want. Can we have uniforms? Could we do that for our students? So at this point in time, we are actually bringing uniforms into the school. Our partners at AAC, they stepped up and they have fully funded out of their own resources an opportunity to provide each student with at least 3 uniforms to get them started, because they know that that can be a big transition for parents. And when we think about the fact that this is a school that, it's a high poverty community, but we have unbelievable students and resources of people, churches and others that are wrapped around this work. But we wanted to start there, and AAC stepped up to make sure that's a reality and not a barrier to any student in that school going forward. The teachers and support staff, we have 24 positions to fill. We have interviews going on today that are still wrapping up with a couple positions. And we're excited about the fact that next week, on Monday, is our first day of training and the kickoff of the professional development that we'll be doing with the team over the next 3 weeks to get ready for August 27th, the first day of school. As I back up, I want to talk a little bit about our recruitment because, as I mentioned earlier, it's a rural community. We have been very, again, I would say blessed to be able to pull in resources not only from the local region, but even down into South Carolina, where we have a lot of teachers that are coming in. As I mentioned, it's mile marker 2 or exit 2 if you get off. So we're pretty close. Places like Dillon and other communities are bringing, in talent to help us support this initiative. We've had great partners with EdForce and other groups that are helping us in the recruitment effort to get placements, in place so that we have all licensed staff. And as I mentioned earlier, our leader, Bruce Major, has a great background, having done work in Charlotte, was very involved in the support and the great work that has come out of Sugar Creek Charter School, but also has an international background where he has been doing work overseas in China, helping to establish schools and doing work in that country to really help build capacity, but a true commitment to kids. You may recall as well, when we were doing the school selection process, moving into the operator selection, We talked about some of the things that SchoolWorks identified as things that we need to pay attention to in our operator model. And some of the things that we talked about, you may recall, are things around services to exceptional children, support services for at-risk students. All of those things that we knew that we had to make sure were going to be in place and were, discussed in that operator evaluation. This leader helps to mitigate those gaps. And if you recall, I made that commitment to this board that when we identify a leader, it was going to be somebody that would help us really not only get this work done, but would address the gaps that we had concerns about. And Mr. Major helps to do that with a strong background in exceptional children, a licensed school psychologist, and can help us make sure that our EC services and things not only do great things for kids, help to ensure compliance, and make sure that we can drive things forward in support of the students that need specialized services and supports. So that is where we are at this point in time in the startup of the school. I want to invite the board to come down, whether it's through our days that we have professional development, whether it's in the first week of school or the first few weeks of school when we're opening the doors. But this is an opportunity to come down and really look at what's happening on the ground level in this school, in this community. And I can't really say it any better than the way that the mayor has kind of phrased this over and over, is that this is a true opportunity. They have such high hopes about what this is going to do in their small town of Roland. And she continues to be a great partner, and you saw pictures of her earlier in some of our community events, and just really proud of where we are. One other update I will provide as we get ready to move into this next round of school selection in September and October is that we talked as well in the past about this need to look at more operators. What are we going to do to think outside the box? And I've planted seeds on this along the way, is that one of the things that makes North Carolina's model so unique is what does an operator look like in this framework? Some states have adopted models where it's only a CMO, a charter management, or an education management model. Our model can look very unique. I mean, we can tailor what an operator can look like on a local level. So we have an event coming up on August 14th that will be held here at DPI, and we have sent out information very broadly. An operator could be a fantastic turnaround school principal that we bring in. The ISD can be an operator. That was a change that was made in the legislation in this last short session. But we also can look at our colleges and universities. We can look at local nonprofits. We can look at, a number of entities that can really step forward to be our partner in this work. Because if you take a strong backbone of an organization that has great support locally with representation that's going to support a school for the long term, even after the ISD is no longer engaged in that 5 years, and you partner them with a strong turnaround leader to do the work, then in the end, what we've done is created those conditions for local ownership, local sustainability that goes well beyond the time that the ISD will be involved in this work during that 5 years. So excited about that, and invite everyone to come out and to be a part of that discussion on August 14th as we talk about cultivating this next generation of operators to be involved with us in this work. So I will pause there. Ms. White.
Okay, questions or comments about the progress that's been made? That's up. Dr. Oxendine.
Dr. Hall, I've got to admit something right here and now for the world to hear. You're going to make the goal that I thought was not possible a few months ago, because I sat here and heard you say August 27th is opening day, and I was just biting my nails, but I think we're going to make it.
You were biting your nails, and I was pulling my hair, so it all worked out.
And I'm not biting. Let me move my nails away. I'm not biting my nails. But it's just remarkable, and I've kind of kept up with it because I live in Robeson County, and I hear the information and all the good things that are going on down in that little tiny town of Roland. What I would like to know more about, though, is what's going to be different about the curriculum, and will we get a chance soon to see something like a school improvement plan?
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am. So from a curriculum standpoint, one of the things that happens from the very get-go is that we are extending the school day. We're creating more opportunities for students to have more time in the learning process throughout the day. We have, and this is not trying to make explicit comparisons, but for example, we had itinerant previously for art and music. We have a full-time art teacher and a full-time music teacher at the school because those are fully integrated into the curriculum program. PE will continue to be, offered there like it has been, but trying to make sure we really have a balanced approach between the specials and how that intersects with the curriculum and the content that will be delivered for reading and math. Reading and math is one of the areas that we know we have to spend a great deal of time. You may recall last year the proficiency rates, if we were looking at grade level proficiency, were about 18.4% combined between math and reading. So we know there's a considerable amount of work, and we will have additional time in those areas, but also trying to make sure it's balanced to where more school does not necessarily always come across in a positive way if you're a child, but if you can balance that with a more meaningful experience in things like art and music and the crossover and how those things to, intersect in curriculum in other content areas, that's where we hope to be very successful. And of course, we are using the core knowledge, Singapore math, and one of the things that really makes me excited about Mr. Major is he also has a strong background in curriculum. And you may recall that we talked about monitoring the curriculum, and if we need to make adjustments, we will so that we're responsive to student needs.
So the professional development right away will be around core knowledge?
Yes, ma'am.
Training in that area?
It'll be around core knowledge, the Singapore math, and also looking at some of the day-to-day operations, because much like Dr. Moody, first day for all teachers, again, basically, this is like opening a brand new school. So we have to talk about some of the norms, the values, the things that we want to see embedded in this school to help be a part of that turnaround, because curriculum is a part of the equation. But we also know culture is going to have to be a huge component of how we really turn this school around, and even things around core virtues, which helps us with character education and building some of those additional skills that go beyond just reading and math.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Dr. Hall, we're excited and look forward to the opening here in just a short couple of weeks.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Okay, one last comment for me. I gotta tell you, my little brain is spinning, and I'm thinking, how can we get the AppSeed project into the hands of the 4-year-old siblings of the incoming kindergartners, and that would be an easy target market and a way to get those kindergartners prepared for the kindergarten year. So maybe we can have that conversation. All right, so moving on, one last item under our agenda is superintendent's report on our charter school department. During last month's called meeting, Mr. Wayne McDevitt gave the general inquiry about what had happened to our charter school department as we have grown exponentially in the last 3 or 4 years. And so the request was made from the board to pull together just some facts and some figures for us to take a look at, so we would be cognizant about that department. So before, I think Dave Machado is going to give that presentation, but Mr. and Superintendent, do you have anything that you want to add or to add as a prelude before we see that report?
No, and thank you to Mr. Machado for putting this together, and look forward to the report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Colby, Vice Chair Davis, Superintendent Johnson, Ms. White. We've had some really exciting topics this morning, and I'm very proud to be part of the charter school community that seems to be mentioned a lot about charter school flexibility, and I want to talk a little bit about how our office is organized, and we do have a PowerPoint, there we go. And appreciate the opportunity to give you a quick update on how our office operates, and I want to begin by saying that our office, as every department in this agency, is being asked to do more with less, and we are certainly up to the task, and we do appreciate this opportunity. Everything that we do in the Office of Charter School is obviously based on the State Board strategic plan, and we always want to make sure that we are increasing the number of high-quality charter schools, and that our number of schools that are meeting academic, operational, and financial goals continues to be at least 90% or more. The goal and the powers and the duties of the Office of Charter School and charter schools in general is very clearly outlined in General Assembly Statute 115C-218. It's very clear what our duties are and that what we should be doing. And again, our goal is to increase the number of high performing charter schools. In 2011, when the cap was removed, we had 3 staff members, 100 charter schools, 19 applications, and 4 renewals at the time. In 2015, we had 159 charter schools, 10 staff members, 28 apps, and 20 renewals. Last year, we had 8 staff members for the 173 charter schools, the 29 applications that CSAB went through and made recommendations to the State Board, and we had 32 renewals. 2018, we'll have 185 schools. As you can see, nationally, The number of staff members per school varies a little bit, but the normal is 1 staff member for every charter schools that are in their authorized portfolio. As I mentioned earlier, we have 8 staff members, myself, a program assistant, and 6 consultants. And we will open up with 185 charter schools, and that means 1 staff person for every 30 schools that are in the state. Our office is broken up into workflows. Probably 4 years ago, we were set up where we had consultants that were assigned to certain schools and went out and did a lot of visits. When Adam Livingston was the director, he changed it to this workflow, this model, which I feel like is much more efficient. So every consultant heads up a workflow and then serves on 2 or 3 other workflows. We do that so we have an expert in that particular workflow, and they're also on other responsibilities, so we're not working in silos in our office. And at this time, I'd like to say that I'm extremely pleased with the quality of my consultants. We brought in 3 or 4 new people. Had to obviously step up our game with losing Dr. Deanna Townsend-Smith, but I'm really pleased with the staff that I have and the quality of work that they're putting out. I'm going to go briefly through the workflows that we have. Communication is one of them. It is obviously the first point of contact for all our stakeholders. It is where we put a huge emphasis on customer service. Anybody that knows me and my emphasis knows that customer service is important. And other than some of the things that are listed right here, we also put out a weekly newsletter that anything that comes from DPI, our office, is put into this newsletter, so our schools and stakeholders are getting 1 email from our office instead of thousands of emails from the department. And we've gotten a lot of compliments on that, and we have trained our leaders to make sure that they read that newsletter every week. Renewals, this is a 2-year process when you go into the renewal cycle. Obviously, when a new school gets a charter, it is for a 5-year term, and after that, we give the data to CSAB. They make a recommendation to you for either, hopefully, a 10-year renewal, could be a 7, 5, 3, or revocation. The renewal process is we have trainings for our schools that we make sure our schools understand what the renewal process is. They have to fill out information, their school plan, what their culture is, and then we will, again, hold trainings for them. And then our team will go out for a renewal visit. And at that time, we will interview the school board, we'll interview the staff, leadership, teachers, parents, and in some schools, we even interview the students. So we really want to get a feel for what is going on in the school. And at this time, one of the improvements we've made is if it is a high school, we will look into do some spot checking on high school transcripts. Applications, this is a process, is almost ongoing where new organizations are wanting to open up charter schools. Our application process started in June 28th, and it will close September 28th at 5 o'clock. We have held 4 application trainings in 2 locations in the state. We've had about 100 people participate in these applications. Probably anticipate somewhere between 30 and 40 new applicants from a wide variety of locations in the state. And this application, this person handles the entire application process that goes in front of the CSAB and communicates with the applicants before we're ready to make a recommendation to this board. Risk assessment. The goal for this team, we used to have performance framework and risk assessment together. We divided it up this year because the workload was so heavy on both workflows. Risk assessment is designed to monitor and keep an eye on our schools, and if we need to make site visits, this is the group that would make a site visit into the school. I think it's really important that we always talk about our charter schools monitored. We have quarterly compliance meetings with the agencies and DPI where we will meet, our office will meet with child nutrition, EC, accountability, all the agencies to see if our schools are performing properly and if they're meeting all the requirements. If they're not, we put them on our list, we go back, communicate with the schools, see what's going on, and possibly put them on our risk assessment visit list. So DPI is very involved in this process, and we really appreciate the help that they give us. We have year-end independent audit that every one of our schools have to have performed, and has to be turned in by October 30th. And if you are a low-performing or a continuing low-performing school, you will get a site visit from us, and you will be called in front of CSAB. Performance framework. This is the platform that our office uses to make sure that state statute, state board policy, and charter agreement obligations are being met. This year, we have the 173 schools we had to go through about 3,000 different documents that were submitted either by the school or the different agencies in DPI to make sure that our schools are compliant. This varies from policies to what their scores, their academic scores are, to are they meeting all the requirements for the federal lunch program or ESD requirements. This is a heavy, heavy lift, but it is something that we feel is extremely important. And this performance framework is the one location that all this information lives. Amendments. Amendments is anytime somebody wants to change something that's in their charter, they must either, it has to be approved, they come before us, has to be, there's some things that our office can approve, the majority of the amendments to change your charter, the state board that has to improve. We are constantly getting requests for amendments. A lot of times when the school writes their application, they get so detailed in what they want to do, and as they start living it, they realize, well, maybe this should be a policy and not something that's in their charter agreement. Charter School Advisory Board and State Board is another workflow where this team manages all the work and paperwork that has to go into for your meetings, executive summaries, whatever information that you need. Plus, we have to give the same information to the Charter School Advisory Board. We are staffed to both this board and CSAB. Planning year ready to open. Once State Board of Ed approves an application, the majority of our schools go into a planning year. It's a one-year process where we have 6 different training sessions here at DPI, one for every month, and we go over everything from governance to testing to power school, everything it's going to take to learn how to run a school. And then in June, we have a 2-day, what we call New Leadership Institute, where these schools are getting ready to open. We bring them back in and do a refresher course to make sure they are ready to open. Professional development. This is a workflow that, since I've been here, I've been trying to put a greater emphasis on. I feel my personal philosophy is the more we can support our schools, hopefully the less we'll have to monitor them. And we do several professional developments. We do a lot in conjunction with DPI. We could not do this without DPI's support. Some of the professional developments that we have instituted is we have regional huddles. We just finished 2 of them in July, where we go out into the field, and different schools will host us, and we have a one-day professional development session where we are constantly talking about better teaching skills, culture for schools, transportation, anything for running a school. We'll put on those in our workshops. We have low-performing training camps. If a school is designated low-performing, we will find a high-performing school that will host us for one day. All the low-performing schools will come to it, and they will model great education. We have done it at Henderson Collegiate, we've done it at Sugar Creek, we've done it at Community School Davidson, and we've done it at Kip Gaston. And where so the schools can come in, they can see best practices, and then they can go in the classroom and see how it's done. That's been very successful. We also do monthly webinars, and we have our annual Leadership Institute. So we really want to make sure that our schools are getting as much professional development from us and DPI as possible. And one new exciting thing that's happening in the Office of Charter School is we finally got through our RFP process for a web-based data collection system. It's called Epicenter, and this is what a lot of authorizes across the country use, where we will have the entire life cycle of a charter school and all their data in this one platform, so we feel like we can do an even better job monitoring their progress. And that's a day in the life of Office of Charter School.
My head is spinning. Thank you. Questions or comments from board members? Chairman Kobe.
Mr. Machado, we appreciate your great leadership of this office. I'm frankly surprised that the number of staff members has gone from 10 to 8. How did that happen? I was not aware that there was any cuts to the staff.
I think several years ago, just before I got here, there were some cuts, and that we had 2 vacant positions, so they were eliminated. I might need a little help on some history on that, but I believe that is what happened. We have not had a cut in staff since I've been here.
Okay. But that was part of a cut we took from the General Assembly, is that right, Mr. Levinson?
I don't recall a specific number, but yes, that would have been part of the investment.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Machado, I heard it too, the 1 to 8 ratio nationally and 1 to 30 for North Carolina. Is there, I should know the answer to this, but in traditional public schools, they have RESAs, they have districts, they have measurements of 1A or 4A in athletics as far as size. It seems like you're running 185 separate LEA, I know they're separate schools, but is there any kind of pyramid or bundling or nesting that occurs? Doing everybody individually, or is there some sort of roll-up?
There's not. Our offices try to assume some of those responsibilities, and with our regional huddles, trying to get the schools that are in the proximity come together and meet. I think as being a charter school operator, I enjoyed that flexibility, but at the same time, it is, they don't have a central office, so they can't just pick up the phone and call somebody. We want them to use our office for that, and DPI is obviously a huge support. If they don't call them direct, we will certainly facilitate that, and they will answer the questions. But
Mr. McDevitt.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you for elevating that. I was not aware that we had cut the staff either, because I was thinking the expansion was necessary when I asked this question a month ago. A little bit like Amy, my head is spinning with some of those things. What I've heard is applications for new charters and inquiries, renewals, replications, expansions at the grade and student count, acquisitions, amendments, conversions, revocations, alternative schools, brick and mortar schools, online charter schools. You've got some organic and some locally run. You've got management companies. It's litigious. We're in court all the time. We have to review them. We got interviews. We got due process. We're working on flexibility. You have to work with athletics as well. And there are overlapping and different timelines and planning years and accelerated applications. And in all this, you got to do monitoring and oversight with governance issues, financial issues, performance issues, access, making sure the lottery is done properly, and all of those things. I just want to get that out there in about 30 seconds so everybody can get that feel.
Thank you for bringing that up.
One of the things that some of us were around 20 some years ago, Phil Kirk, a quarter of a century ago, when we were talking about charter schools. And one of the buzzwords was innovation. And having this laboratory called charter schools, where we would do the research and the data and capture that so that we could take best practices to scale. And I know that in some cases we've done that. I just don't see a systemic, routine way of capturing that and doing that. And I really think it's a major piece that's missing. And we are doing a lot of innovation. I mean, we got lots of innovation going on, and we could all name those different programs and initiatives. And if you don't think there's innovation, go to a classroom. You'll see it in a teacher. But the piece that was the buzz at that time was that one of the pieces would be this this place where we would capture that data. I know with 8 staff members, there's no chance of that. I am concerned about the monitoring and the oversight and the expectations that the public has, that we're perhaps doing more ahead of the curve than we just have the ability to do. But I do want to just point out that somehow we need to find a way that we're in a routine way, systemic way, of capturing the good stories out there and taking those to scale.
And that's a great point. And there are a lot of great stories in the charter school community and a lot of innovation going on. And I think one of the roadblocks is we haven't gotten where we have a very professional relationship with a lot of the local LEAs. If we could improve that, where there's better dialogue between us and them, that would certainly help in that cause.
Just a very quick question. How, as far as the history, I'm thinking the history of charter schools, and I know you were not here going back to the 90s when the program began, Mr. Machado, but maybe someone can answer this question. How large has the charter school office ever been?
I think it was at 10, but I'm going to defer to Dr. Thompson-Smith.
So it has only been 10 staff members?
Right.
Okay. And we lost 2 when? We lost 2 positions prior to your coming on board, not this year, but when?
I would think 3 to 4 years ago.
3 or 4 years ago. So it's been stable 3 or 4 years. But we've grown in number of charter schools. So that's the ratio we're dealing with.
From 100 to 185. Ms. Godwin.
I just wanted to mention, I had the honor and the pleasure of attending the Charter School Conference just a few short weeks ago, and served on a panel where we discussed our desire to build bridges and to build relationships and different ways of how we can do more collaboration between the local LEAs and the charter schools in the area. So I just wanted to let Mr. McDivitt know that the desire is definitely there, and the whole reason for charter schools was to share out innovative ideas and practices and to work together, because our primary goal is to grow children and to grow leaders for North Carolina. So I just wanted to make sure you knew that the desire is there, and we're hopefully working on that bridge.
I think we can do a better job of that. I think the one anecdotal story I will give you is that I did have a lady who told me she had to take her grandchild, out of the public school, and then she described how well she was doing at the early college. Now, she referred to it as a charter school. And so I think, and I made 2 points. One is that charter schools are public schools. And second, the early college is part of that traditional system that you're referencing. I'm not sure it matters, and I'm not sure it should matter to that grandparent. But I think we could do a better job of, and there are some in this nation. I think there's one county in Colorado that is a model for everyone working together, including homeschoolers.
Right. Thank you.
One last comment.
Okay, just real quickly. I'm glad you said that. I think there's a huge communication challenge out there for us. I mean, I can say in my own little small circle of friends that know that a charter school, they hear me say it all the time, is a public school. I have to correct them. I've corrected the same people 10 times when they go, well, now they're not going to go to public school, they're going to go to charter school. And I'm saying, no, a charter school is a public school. So there's people that I've told face to face and they know, I got it, they turn around and say the same thing. So we need to get that message out so parents will understand. A charter school in North Carolina, we have public charter schools.
Yeah, and our leaders tell us all the time, when a person is asking about their particular school, they say, how much does it cost?
Yeah,
and
right.
No, it's a public school.
Yep.
And one last thing, just to kind of piggyback off of that, I think that begins with leadership. I heard a comment that was made where a leader in our government verbally, said that charter schools are outperforming traditional, schools. Well, it's kind of like they're pitting us against each other, and it's not about you know, pitting each other against one another, but, you know, uniting and having a shared vision for our state. So we need to make sure that our leaders understand that we're all in it together, and it's not a matter of who's outperforming who, which I feel like was kind of a misrepresentation, because, you know, there's differences in the way that every school is structured, and there's lots of variables that play into accountability.
Absolutely.
So
Very
we need to
complicated.
make sure that we're very careful with our narrative, and that we are supporting all teachers in North Carolina, and giving them the respect they deserve.
Excellent. Well, thank you to my colleagues for the conversation around this subject. And Mr. Machado, now on your list of agenda to things to do, you need to launch a social media campaign to dispel the us versus them mentality. So publicity is now on your list of things to do. But thanks, and I look forward to future discussion as the year progresses about how we can make sure that all of our public schools get the support that they need. That concludes our committee.
Okay, thank you, Ms. White. We have gone a good bit over time limit, and I think we were a little optimistic about starting at 11 instead of 10 this time. So I'm going to cut short the lunch. Not that short. We'll reconvene at 1:45. 45 minutes.